On January 21st, 2009, Dwayne Peterson stood in 11-degree cold outside 14 Callaway Drive and stared at a hard hat hanging from a nail. He had read that meter 6 years running. He knew every porch light on Pinecrest Terrace. This house had been dark for weeks. The hat was bright orange. Sight issued, it hung from a single nail on the garage eave brim, facing outward, perfectly level. The nail was new, unrusted, driven into freshly split wood. The kind of split that happens when a nail goes in fast, in the cold, without a pilot hole. Peterson stood there 4 minutes before he decided to make the call. That call would eventually lead to a confession. 3 recovered bodies and a trial in which a prosecutor walked to the center of a courtroom and held up that exact hat to close her opening statement. But on that January morning, none of that existed yet. There was only a dark house, a locked truck in the driveway, and an object that had no business being there. Dale Kowalski was 55 years old and had lived at 14 Callaway Drive for longer than most of his neighbors had owned their homes. He was a senior maintenance technician, the kind of work a mine operations depended on but rarely noticed until something broke. He had spent decades learning how industrial equipment failed, and he was good at it in the particular way that quiet, methodical people are good at things. Not loudly, not with flair, but without error. His daughter, Amy, lived in Billings, Montana. She called the first Sunday of every month, not approximately the first Sunday. The first Sunday. Dale Kowalski was the kind of man who called ahead if he was going to be late. Amy had grown up knowing that if her father said he would be somewhere, he would be there, and if something changed, she would hear from him first. He bowled on Wednesday nights at Hartwell Lanes. The same 3 friends, the same lanes, the same ritual since Amy was in elementary school. In early October 2008, before he signed in to Rotation 7 at Kessler Basin Copper Mine, he told those 3 men he would be back by Christmas. That was not a wish, that was a schedule. Kessler Basin sits in Carbon County, Wyoming. No permanent address. A single unpaved service road running 17 miles off the state highway. Prefab bunkhouses, 60 and 90-day rotation cycles, staffed through agencies like Crestfield Staffing out of Casper. Workers signed in, worked the rotation, signed out, and went home. The system was designed for efficiency. It moved skilled labor in and out of isolation, and it worked, by every operational measure, extremely well. Kowalski signed in on October 14th, 2008. He signed out December 13th. Both entries are documented. The last person to see him that morning was a man named Michael Reynolds, who offered him a ride from the Rawlins staging lot. 3 workers at the lot heard the offer. Reynolds drove a gray Dodge pickup with a magnetic placard on the door that read, Rimrock Safety Services. He was 41 years old, an independent safety inspector licensed in Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah. Colleagues described him as quiet, organized, and helpful, the man who remembered which coffee the camp superintendent preferred. The offer of a ride at the end of a 60-day rotation was not unusual. It was, in fact, exactly the kind of thing you would expect from a man like Reynolds. 2 Sundays passed after December 13th with no call to Amy. She filed a missing persons report on January 8th, 2009. That same day, Patrolman Scott Hendricks drove to 14 Callaway Drive for a welfare check. The house was locked, no forced entry. Kowalski's truck sat unmoved in the driveway. No hospitals in Carbon, Albany, or Laramie counties had any record of him. Hendricks logged the check. The case moved into the queue. 13 days later, Dwayne Peterson stood in the cold and looked at a hard hat that, according to every equipment record at Kessler Basin, should not have been hanging there at all. Kowalski's assigned hard hat had been checked back into the Kessler Basin equipment lockup on December 13th. Brad Tolley, the camp superintendent, confirmed it personally. The orange hat on the eve of 14 Callaway Drive was a second hat. Same site logo, same rotation markings, and it had no documented path to that garage. That distinction changed everything. Tolley's equipment log showed one hat from rotation 7 signed out and never returned. It had been issued to Michael Reynolds, so the question shifted. It was no longer about where Dale Kowalski had gone after he left the staging lot. It was about why Michael Reynolds' hard hat was hanging from a nail on a dead man's house. And then there was the nail itself. The 16-penny framing nail was new, unrusted, driven flush into freshly split wood on the garage eave. Karen Mueller's investigator photographed it. January 22nd, the morning after Dwayne Peterson's call. The split in the wood was clean. Whatever had been hanging there had been hung recently, not weeks ago, not years ago. Mueller subpoenaed Reynolds' credit card records on January 27th. One purchase stood out immediately. On December 14th, one day after the Kessler Basin rotation ended, Reynolds' card had been used at a hardware store in Hartwell, Wyoming. The purchase, a 60-count box of framing nails and a tube of single-use wood filler. Hartwell is not between Rawlins and Gillette. It is not a logical detour. It is not on the way to anywhere. Reynolds lived or worked. He had no documented reason to be in that town on that date. When Mueller's team reached Reynolds for an initial interview on February 7th, he said he had made a wrong turn. He stopped to stretch his legs. He remembered buying something at a hardware store, but couldn't recall what. He was not arrested that day. The evidence was thin. His lieutenant said so directly when Mueller first presented the full picture on January 29th, but Mueller had already looked further back. Crestfield Staffing, headquartered in Casper, maintained placement records going back to 2004. Mueller pulled Reynolds' full history. He had worked 8 rotations between 2004 and 2008, all through Crestfield and related firms. 8 rotations across Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah. She pulled the names of every worker on every rotation Reynolds had completed. 3 names came back with open missing persons cases in separate jurisdictions. Victor Hadley, 48, a drill operator from Cheyenne, had gone missing in February of 2006 after completing a rotation at the Dunbar Phosphate operation in Encampment, Wyoming. Last seen accepting a ride from a fellow contractor at the end of the rotation. The case had been opened by Albany County authorities and had gone inactive. No leads, no body, no resolution. Steve Partlow, 51, a pipe fitter from Pueblo, Colorado, had disappeared in September of 2007 after finishing a rotation at the Colfax Ridge extraction site in Los Animas County. Same last sighting, accepting a ride at rotation's end. The case sat open and inactive in Colorado. No leads, no body. 3 rotations. 3 missing men. 3 jurisdictions that had never exchanged a single document. The pattern had been there for 3 years. It had never been visible, because no one had ever looked across the lines. Mueller walked her lieutenant through the overlap on January 29th. He told her the evidence was thin. She had the placement rosters, the hard hat, the nail purchase, and a shuttle manifest that could not confirm whether Kowalski had boarded or not. Nothing yet placed Reynolds inside 14 Callaway Drive. Nothing yet placed. Reynolds with Hadley or Partlow at the moment they disappeared. Thin was accurate. But the geometry was impossible to ignore. On February 3rd, 2009, A state occupational safety analyst named Diane Holt sat at her desk in Cheyenne and finalized a compliance audit of Crestfield Staffing's contractor, rosters covering 2005 through 2008. She had been reviewing billing records. She found that one independent contractor had billed more hours than his license permitted on 3 separate rotations, the same 3 rotations, it would turn out, as the missing men. She had no knowledge that any of the men from those rotations were missing. She sent a routine compliance query to the Wyoming Department of Labor and moved on to her next file. That query sat in a Labor Department inbox for 4 days. On February 7th, the same morning, Mueller's team conducted their first interview with Reynolds. An administrative assistant at the Labor Department named Pat Ingram opened the compliance query and read the name at the top of Holt's attachment. Ingram had seen the law enforcement bulletin about the Kowalski investigation. 2 weeks earlier, the name matched. She called Mueller's unit at 8:15 in the morning. Reynolds had been interviewed and released hours before. He was not under arrest. He was in his truck somewhere between Hartwell and Gillette. Mueller moved. She contacted Carbon County authorities and requested grounds for a hold. Reynolds had an outstanding traffic warrant, minor, unrelated, and it was enough. He was taken into custody that afternoon on the warrant. It gave Mueller a window. Reynolds spent his first night in detention without incident. On the second night, he began talking to his cellmate, a repeat property offender named Eddie Carnes. Reynolds said he had made a mistake with a man who had trusted him. He said it had happened before. He said the hard part was the hat. He hadn't planned to keep it. He couldn't throw it away. He needed to put it somewhere that felt right. Carnes contacted the duty officer the next morning. On February 14th, 2009, Reynolds sat across from investigators and gave a recorded confession. It ran 4 hours. He described all 3 killings in detail. He gave the locations of all 3 bodies, 2 in Wyoming, 1 in Colorado. He described driving to 14 Callaway Drive in the early morning hours of December 14th, parking 2 blocks away. Walking to the garage with the hard hat and spending 14 minutes in 14-degree cold, driving 4 attempts at a single nail because he didn't want to wake the neighbors. He said the hat needed to be somewhere that meant something. Picture the Rollins staging lot on December 13th. The rotation is over. Men are loading gear into trucks, shaking hands, making plans for Christmas. Reynolds walks over to Kowalski and offers a ride. Kowalski accepts. 3 men standing nearby hear the offer. Nothing about this moment looks wrong. That is exactly the point. Every account of Reynolds before February 2009 describes the same man. Quiet, organized, the kind of person who showed up with the right tool before you asked. He remembered the camp superintendent's coffee order. He covered shifts when someone else was sick. In 60 days of close quarters, he built the specific kind of trust that only comes from shared inconvenience. The trust of men who know each other's worst moods by day, 40, and still show up. One version of this story, the version that felt true for weeks, was that Kowalski had boarded the shuttle and something had happened to him after. The shuttle manifest showed his name checked off. The truck was in the driveway. No forced entry, no hospital record. A man who had simply walked away from his own life. Mueller's lieutenant was not wrong to call the evidence thin. From one angle, it looked like a disappearance with no clear cause and no clear direction. But that version collapses the moment you look at the nail. A man who walks away from his life does not have a second hard hat hung on his garage, Eve with a fresh nail, purchased the following day by someone who had no reason to be in his town. The shuttle manifest only showed a name checked off by a driver who, by his own account, did not recount heads before pulling out. The manifest confirmed a name on a list. It confirmed nothing else. The stronger version, the one the physical evidence demands, starts from the opposite end. Reynolds was in Hartwell on December 14th. He bought nails. The wood at the eave was freshly split. The hat on that nail belonged to Reynolds, logged out of Kessler Basin, and never returned. He had been on the same rotation as two other men who had last been seen accepting rides. Those cases sat in separate states, unknown to each other, because no one had looked at the same contractor across 3 different agency lines. The warmth of the rotation was not background color. It was the mechanism. Reynolds was good at being trusted. That skill, patient, specific, reliable, was how he moved. The offer of a ride at the end of 60 days together did not feel like a risk. It felt like the natural end of something that had been building for 2 months. The hat is what happened when that method met something Reynolds had not anticipated. The need to mark it. He told Carnes he couldn't throw it away. He needed it to mean something. He hung it on the eave of a dead man's house at 2 in the morning and drove 4 nails before the 5th one held, carefully, quietly, in 14 degrees, so the neighbors would not wake. That care is the portrait, not the killing, the nail. On February 14th, 2009, Michael Reynolds sat across a table from investigators and talked for 4 hours. He did not stop to ask for a lawyer. He did not ask for water. He described 3 men, 3 locations, 3 ends. By the time the recording stopped, every loop that had opened with a meter reader, standing in 11-degree cold, outside a dark house, was closed. Dale Kowalski had been killed on December 14th, 2008, at a rural property Reynolds maintained outside Hartwell. One day after Reynolds bought 60 framing nails in a tube of wood filler at a hardware store in the wrong city, on the wrong road home. The sequence had always been there. Kowalski signed out of Kessler Basin on December 13th. Reynolds offered the ride. The nail purchase was December 14th. The hat went up that night. Victor Hadley had gone missing in February of 2006 after a rotation at the Dunbar phosphate operation in Encampment, Wyoming. 48 years old, drill operator from Cheyenne. His case had been open and inactive for nearly 3 years when Mueller pulled it from a separate agency's files. Reynolds had been on that rotation. Steve Partlow had disappeared in September of 2007 after the Colfax Ridge extraction site in Los Animas County, Colorado. 51 years old. Pipe fitter from Pueblo. His case sat in a Colorado file the same way. Hadley sat in Wyoming, categorized, undisturbed, waiting for someone to look across state lines. Reynolds had been on that rotation too. All 3 bodies were recovered from the locations Reynolds described. Partlow's recovery was completed on February 19th, 2009. That single recovery, a man found in a field in southern Colorado based on directions given in an interview room in Wyoming, triggered the formation of a tri-agency task force. Karen Mueller was asked to lead it on a Thursday between volleyball practices. She said yes before the call was finished. Reynolds entered a not guilty plea at arraignment. He held it for 11 months. Then he withdrew it. The trial proceeded to verdict in December of 2010. 3 counts of first-degree murder. Guilty on all 3. 3 consecutive life terms. No possibility of parole. The orange hard hat was admitted into evidence. The prosecutor used it to close her opening statement to the jury. She described what Dwayne Peterson had seen on January 21st. A bright orange side-issued hard hat. Rotation 7 logo, hanging from a single nail on the eave of a house whose owner had not been home since December. A nail that was new, unrusted, hammered into freshly split wood. She let that image sit for a moment before she said anything else. by the time the jury heard Reynolds' words from the cell, that the hard part was the hat, that he had needed to put it somewhere that felt right, that he had driven 4 nails in 14-degree darkness before the 5th one held quietly enough. The image had been transformed completely. It was not a mystery anymore. It had never really been a mystery. It was a marker. 3 cases, 3 jurisdictions, 3 inactive files sitting in separate offices in 2 states, none of them connected, until a compliance query about billing hours landed on the desk of an administrative assistant who had once seen a bulletin about a missing man from Hartwell, Wyoming, and recognized a name. That is the margin by which this case was solved. Not a task force, not a tip line, a billing discrepancy, and an accidental cross-reference between a Labor Department query and a homicide bulletin. Diane Holt, the occupational safety analyst in Cheyenne, who flagged Reynolds' hours, did not know 3 men were missing. She was doing an audit. Pat Ingram, who took the call, had no reason to know the name Reynolds unless she happened to have seen that bulletin. She had. She called Mueller at 8:15 in the morning. Victor Hadley was 48 years old. He had a life in Cheyenne. His case had been open since 2006, 3 years before anyone came looking. Steve Partlow was 51. He had gone home to Pueblo, Colorado, in theory, except he never arrived, and his case had been open since 2007, 2 years before Mueller pulled it from a Colorado file and placed it next to Wyoming, and Wyoming then saw what they made together. Dale Kowalski had told his bowling teammates he would be back by Christmas. He had been bowling with the same 3 friends since his daughter Amy was in elementary school. He called Amy on the first Sunday of every month without fail. He was the kind of man who called ahead if he was going to be late. 2 Sundays passed without a call before Amy drove the report to Hartwell. The case sat in queue for weeks after a welfare check found a locked house, a truck that had not moved, and no sign of forced entry. A meter reader stood outside that house in January cold and debated whether a hard hat on a nail was worth a phone call. It was. There is something in this case that resists easy summary, and it is not the violence, it is the mechanism. The mining rotation was designed to be intimate. 60 days in close quarters, shared meals, covered shifts, men who felt they understood their bunkmates better than their own families. Reynolds was good at that intimacy, genuinely good at it. The people who worked with him used words like reliable, organized, the kind of man who showed up with the right wrench before you asked. The offer of a ride at the Rollins staging lot at the end of 2 months together was not suspicious. It was the obvious end of something that had been building for 60 days. That is what the rotation system was never designed to account for. Not malice dressed up as kindness. Kindness used as a method. The hat is what remained when the method was done. Reynolds told his cellmate he could not throw it away. He needed it to mean something. He drove to Hartwell in the early hours of December 15th, stood in 14-degree cold outside a dead man's dark house, and worked quietly until the nail held 4 attempts. Not because he was careless, because he was careful. He did not want to wake the neighbors. That care is the thing that stays. Not the scale of it, not the span of years, not the 3 jurisdictions and the 3 inactive files. The care. The man who was described by everyone who knew him as quiet and organized and helpful, standing in the freezing dark with a framing nail and an orange hard hat, trying to get it right. The prosecutor stood before the jury in December of 2010 and described what Dwayne Peterson had found 6 weeks after that night. A bright orange hat, a new nail, freshly split wood. She let the jury hold that image. Then she told them what it meant. Amy Kowalski's Sunday calls ended the way all impossible things end. Not with an explanation that makes it easier, but with the facts laid out in sequence until the sequence is undeniable. Her father had signed out of Kessler Basin on December 13th. He had accepted a ride. He had never arrived anywhere after that. The hat hung on the eve of 14 Callaway Drive until January 21st, 2009, 39 days. Visible from the street, orange against greywood, the only mistake Michael Reynolds ever made that left a mark in daylight. This show is made by Ober Media.